Hey, lovely ladies, how you doing? So I'm coming to you live from my, even though you can't see it, very messy office area. It's kind of late at night. I'm in my work clothes still, but I got my comfy sweater on, so kind of chilling. But I just kind of wanted to take a couple minutes to share about what we're learning this week, and really for the next couple of weeks, about being created in God's image. I know there are several of you that cannot join us on Sunday morning. If you are having a hard time getting to church, let me know and I will try to see if I can arrange for a ride for you. I know that pertains to at least one of you. So definitely let me know that. But I just kind of wanted to, since I am keeping in contact with all of you ladies, I still wanted you to be able to participate in some way with what we're doing in class. And I think I'm going to wipe off my glasses or something because there's something on that that's really driving me crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's just the glare. So anyway, the pages that we're covering in your book this week are pages 59 through 60, and we may not get through all of that on Sunday morning, but we are also covering Genesis 1 verse 2. I'm sorry, chapters 1 and 2, and we're focusing primarily on Genesis 1 verse 26 through 27, which is what they call our memory verse. Let me read these verses to you. And then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over the livestock, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So I guess the question that at least I came up with when I was studying was, what are the personal implications for us of being made in the image of God? And how does this make man, this type of creation, make man and womankind different from everything else that God made? So those are just some questions that we're answering here. Our book calls the crown of creation humankind. Sorry, my son walked in. I just wanted to let him know what I was doing here. So our book calls the crown of creation is humankind. So let's just kind of talk for a minute about creation. So in Genesis 1 and 2 is where you're going to find the creation story about how God made the world. Some people will argue that, oh, well, these are two totally different creation stories, but they're not. It's, creation is kind of like the overview in chapter 1, and then in chapter 2, God gets kind of into the nitty-gritty details of how he created man and some other stuff that's going on there. So those aren't in conflict with one another. It's just that, it's more to the story. So some of the most important words in the whole Bible are right here in Genesis, and I love this, that in Genesis 1:1 it says, "In the beginning, God." So God was, he is, he has no beginning, he has no end, he's eternal. And these are things that are really hard for us as humans to just understand, because terms like that make my brain hurt. So God exists outside of space and time. Before there was anything, he was there. So again, this is kind of where the idea of belief comes in. We don't have to understand everything that's in the Bible. We know that the Bible tells us, first off, that in the beginning God was there. He was not something that was created. He always existed, and that's hard for us to understand. I believe that God was there in the beginning before time. We are so limited by time because our entire lives revolve around these things that we have to do. So, it's just weird. God is other. He's different than people, and time is kind of a big part of that. Our long lives are just like a vapor to God, because he is eternal. He doesn't end. On page 62 in your reading, section of this chapter, we learn that the Hebrew word used here in Genesis is not a word used for human creative ability, but only to God's creative ability. And the reason being is that we only create with stuff that we have that's already here. We can't create something out of nothing like God can. In fact, I wish that the text would have given that word, and I probably could figure out what that word is if I looked it up, but just didn't get there yet. So why is this word different here? Well, it's because God, like I said before, can create something out of nothing. We can only create with things that already exist. God creating, as God's creating, he ends each day by saying that it's good. Good is kind of an interesting word, it's not super descriptive in our language, but I have a feeling that, I don't know, maybe in the original it was a little bit more descriptive, but God just says that it's good, and something's good. It's good, you know what I mean? But when he gets to man and creating them, he says that it's very good. So there is this distinction there between creating birds or creating sea animals and creating people, that there's something special here. Sorry, I'm kind of taking a look at my notes here. So with the rest of creation, God just speaks them into being. God just says, let there be light, and there's light, with the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth. God just says, and it is. But that's not so with man. When you read Genesis 1, you kind of might gloss over that uniqueness of God's creation, because it's just, like I said, the overview of like everything that happened. But when we get to the expanded view, the events that are in chapter 2 of Genesis, we learn that man's creation is very unique. So in Genesis 2, verse 7, it says, "Then the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living creature." So God literally forms man from the earth and breathes life into him. That always kind of like amazes me too, because I think of like, what would it like to be, breathing God's air, just, I don't know, something cool to think about. So you've probably not experienced this, but you've seen something like this where having someone else breathe for you. I know my girls were born real early and they could not breathe on their own. So one of the things that kind of like, I don't know, blew my mind a bit as the mom was like when I saw this bill for their resuscitation. So basically bringing them back to life, so to speak, through breathing. And I know this is something you guys have seen on shows or film or whatever, but it's the situation where in movies, someone's doing CPR and then all of a sudden this person just, they gasp and they start breathing again. So I guess when I think about the creation of Adam, that's kind of like the mental picture that I have, is that time where someone's gasping for air because all of a sudden they're alive, and I just kind of like have that. I don't know if that's what it was like, but that's the visual that I have based on just like God breathing that initial first breath, that life into Adam. I just always think of that as being kind of a dramatic thing. I don't know. So again, kind of that idea that, just minutes before God breathes into him, Adam's just this lump of dirt, that God formed. But the important thing is that God formed him, and he didn't just make him whatever. He made him in his image. So there is something about us that is like God, doesn't mean we are God, but there's something there that is similar. Eve's creation was also unique, kind of similar to Adam's, but also different. So anyway, God says in Genesis 2, verse 18, that it's not good for the man to be alone. God says that he's going to make a helper for him. So it's like all the other animals, they had someone else like them, but not like them, male and female. God created them. So God didn't do this in this situation with Adam. He created Adam first. I don't know if it was like, hey, I created Adam, and then days, months, years, minutes later, he creates Eve. But the important thing is that there's a distinct creation of Adam and there's a distinct creation of Eve. So anyway, God says he's going to make a helper for him. And this is in chapter 2, verse 21. We find that the Lord caused Adam a deep sleep to fall upon the man. And while he slept, God took one of his ribs and closed up the place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. So I'm going to be real honest here again. I don't have all the answers. This is just something I'm kind of chewing on, just like you guys are chewing on. But it's like, I don't know. I don't get the whole rib thing. I'm not sure why God chose to, form Adam from the dust of the ground, and then he decides to take a rib from Adam to make Eve. I just have always kind of wondered why God didn't make Eve just the same way. I also he could have, but he didn't. Part of me is like, did God want Adam to give up something? It's a detail that's there, but it's like, I don't feel like we should just kind of but spend a lot of time figuring out, okay, why did God do this? The important thing is that he did. And whether God, even though God got a rib from Adam and formed Eve, those raw materials were still there. So whether it was bone or dirt or whatever, God creates Eve. So the important part is that they are unique in their creation, in the way that they are made by God, because they are made in God's image, just like we were made in God's image. So let's see if I can read my writing here. It's kind of funny. Adam and Eve were not like the rest of creation because they had the mark of God on them. They were, and we are, made in God's image. That doesn't mean that we are gods ourselves. I know that there are people that do believe that, that we're all kind of like a god unto ourselves, but that's putting ourselves in God's place, and that's not how we do things. God is God, period. But we are unique, we are special. God has a plan for mankind to be different and set apart from the rest of the creation. There are people that do believe that, we are no higher than the animals, that we have these animalistic, I guess, tendencies or urges or whatever. But the Bible is very different in this, is that there's a distinction between animals and man and consciousness, and there's just, man can think. It's, we don't rely upon instinct. We have a conscience and all these other things. So there definitely is a very clear distinction in the Bible between man and animal. Our book says it really well on page 63 that there is something about God that we replicate or resemble, something that corresponds to the original. So I don't know if you've ever seen a copy of something, but like if there's a, like a famous painting or something like that, you can have a replica, but it's not necessarily going to be an exact copy of the original. Nowadays we can make copies of things, but, even I feel like sometimes when I make a copy like at school or whatever, it's like, it's just not as clear or something like that. So it's similar, but I think I'm going off on a tangent here. Anyway, so the next couple of weeks, we're going to discuss this more. We're going to try to discern what exactly it means that God made us to be like him. For your homework, I want you guys to read Genesis 1 and 2 if you can. And, if you can't get into Genesis 2, at least go through Genesis 1. Pay close attention to those verses 26 through 27, because that's kind of like the gist of what we're going to be discussing. And I'm actually going to memorize this. This is something that like our book recommends that we memorize. I'm not going to memorize verse 27, 26, but I am going to memorize 27. And the reason why, it's just like, I feel like it's the epitome of what God's talking about here. I'm also not the best at memorizing, so if I can memorize one verse, gonna kind of go for that. So I just would challenge you, ladies, that if you feel so compelled to memorize that as well. So let's try to read through Genesis 1 at least. Work on maybe memorizing that verse 27. And then on your book, working through pages 59 through 60. And then we're going to discuss them on Sunday. So praying for you all, and hope you have a good week. If there's anything in particular you want to talk to me about, just message me. I'm here whenever. And then we are hoping to get together in February. You might even just kind of do just a real casual sit down, hang out, snack slash dinner or lunch, maybe somewhere like Bread Company or whatever in Florissant. So maybe after church. So just be thinking about that. And then maybe for the next time we get together, maybe we do something fun. I know someone had mentioned an escape room or something different. So let's just be thinking on that and see if what works for getting together in February. Take care, ladies. Bye.